Okay, so this is going to be an introductory run through of ChatGPT for people who are interested, because I'm using it more and more. It's addictive. I'll run you through. This is my account. This is the Mac app. You can also use the same interface in your web browser. There's this sidebar here with all of your different chats. I'll get into detail about what's here, but I'm going to try and keep this really high level. And here's your chat interface. The contents of this current chat include I worked together with it to draw up the information that I'll be presenting to you. But let's get into it. Start with how to use it, because there's things it's good at and things it's bad at. Number one, idea generation is really good at brainstorming, whatever, marketing strategies, how to deal with a difficult client, creative concepts. It's really good at this because it can generate lots of material really quickly, and a lot of it's low quality. But our job as professionals is to be able to see what's good quality. And so if you take that executive functional, if you're less, just to use my industry's terminology, if you're less the designer and you're more the creative director, let it put ideas together and you choose among them. It's really good at that. I think most people have heard about this. Summarization, obviously, it can read a 100-page contract right away or a report. It's pretty good at that. Editing and refinement. This is something that people who have tried to use it and struggled with it often don't get to, which is if you instruct it to be better and how to be better, it will immediately try something and it will learn through your instructions how to be better generally. So you'll find it improves really nicely. And then data and trend analysis. That's just kind of another way of saying summarization, but it's good with data. And then decision support. This is one that you have to be careful with because sometimes it will give you bad advice, as we've all heard. It's really good at confidently presenting bad advice. But I do think it's very valuable because you can ask it to convince you of this or make an argument, but you, as the actual decision maker, have to be convinced. So as long as you're not giving over your agency to it, it's a valuable tool. If you're like, actually, and this is something naysayers are always talking about, like, oh, if you let ChatGPT make decisions for you, that's obviously a bad idea. But I don't think anyone's doing that. But they are letting ideas fight it out in front of them. Play the devil's advocate for me on this decision is a really simple way to trigger this kind of thing. Let's talk about the tactical level of how to get good results. And I'll show this in action. I'll actually run through something for you as an example. But number one, be specific. The open-ended question can work, but I would be most skeptical of that. It's very short-sighted, and the more specific you are, the better an answer it's going to give you. Leave all the executive functioning of the brain to you and ask it little tiny tasks. Even if they're complex, if they're super specific, it tends to be good at them. Iterate. It'll give you bad stuff, but you'd be surprised how often asking it to give you better stuff will work, especially if you give it the why. Use context. So feed it information, feed it data, information, teachings, expert opinions, and it will give you smarter outputs for real. And then, of course, know its limits. Don't trust in it whatsoever. Just use it as an extension of what you would do. For instance, I might sift through all these documents and make an educated guess on this thing. Well, it takes 90 seconds to give it a 1,000-page book and have it come up with something. Actually, it takes more like 15 seconds. And so you can get it to do that grunt work and then summarize for you, and then you're making the executive level decisions. For something like that, it's pretty good. You need to be in the driver's seat. I think that's kind of obvious, but it's worth reiterating. So let's talk about how it's laid out and how to use it. So the main window is here. You chat in here. So you can ask it a question. Up here, you choose who you're chatting with. These are the different models. In general, GPT-4o is great, and I use it all the time. O1 is more slightly like a hyper-analytical version. O3 Mini is like a cousin. These are for coding and stuff. They work really well. Sometimes they can be great for decision-making stuff, and sometimes I'm having good luck with them. I think in order to get these, you need to be paying the $20 a month. They tend to be really good. They're slower, but generally ChatGPT 4o is really strong. And the thing is, these other models will not accept all the inputs. For instance, you can upload PDFs, you can upload photos, you can upload screenshots, you can have it search the web, which you do by clicking this button. Deep research, I don't even know how to use that yet, but it's basically searching, I think, research journals and stuff. You can have a disappearing chat. So say there's something sensitive you're asking about, like, I don't know, a medical issue or a personal problem, and you just don't want it to like stay in your history. You can use that. And down here, you can change the model. But generally, everything you ask it pops in here as a new chat. And so in here, you will see all the different contexts that I use. There's also folders now. So these are folders that contain multiple chats, but they're really clunky. It doesn't work great. So for instance, auto riffing. I have a riffing chat where just whatever's, I need info on, but don't need to save a context, will just be in my riff chat. So earlier, I was working on an outline for a deck. Oh yeah, also just like asking it questions. What was that show where there was like a judge who was bad? What was that show about the judge who was mean or bad or evil or whatever? You're probably thinking of Your Honor or the judge. Who was that actor? What was that movie? That goes into my riffing, which is kind of just like a sludgy mess of stuff, but very helpful. Viral social media chatter. So often we're strategizing about like how to help clients to have their social media be more powerful and reach more people. And all of that is in a context here. The last thing I had to do here was I took a transcript of a YouTube video that I watched and enjoyed, and I was like, hey, summarize that. So it gave me a summary. Let's go here. This is a story brand. So my company uses this book called Story Brand a lot. And this is a chat where every time we talk about branding related to my company, it's in one place and it knows everything my company does. And it also knows all these touchstones from this book. And so that's a really good context. Outreach is down here. This is any sales email I get in. I'll send it the email and it will say, here's a good, I just found these guys, blah, blah, blah. Here's the situation. I want to send an email to these guys. And this, is me. I just come in here and I type really quickly everything I wanted to cover. And it formalizes it just enough because I've trained this chat over time to not be overly formal, to be familiar with people, to get to the point, because business email, I conduct it a certain way and I want it to match what I do. So it gives me a pretty good version 1 of the email. And often I'll say, it's not quite right. Can you just, something fun like how I've worked with big brands in my day, because I want to catch their attention. And here it gives me an example. And another thing that I do a lot is I will say, here's my version. I liked what you did, but I changed it. Just flag any issues. And often it'll be like, yep, looks good. And that's a nice validation point. So the main thing I want to teach here is these chats, each one is a different context. And so if you are, dealing with an employee, for instance, and you always are trying to motivate them in a certain way, you can tell the chat to help you motivate someone. And it will use that specificity, and you can tell it, try to motivate someone, but also here's the issues we have. They're really good all the time, except something comes up once in a while and this happens. It's really going to give you, that's kind of like a brainstorm. It's going to give you like 5 ways you might motivate them. And that's a certain context. 4 of these motivation ideas are horrible, but I actually think this would help this person to succeed better on the job. That's using brainstorming, but also that context can help you because later you might want to motivate them again, and it already knows about you and your relationship with that person. And that building of that context makes it better and better at what it does. Okay, so that's the end of part 1. Let's get started with part 2. Let's talk about custom GPTs. I use it now and then. It's not as useful as you might think. For instance, speaking with Anthony, he mentioned how his friend was training a model to be better at doing things for him. The simplest and best way to do that, and what his friend is probably referring to, is he was using one of these contexts, one of these chats, because the history of that chat, it gets better at stuff. So in a way, I've been training a model on how to do outreach, how to do sales, emails, or just on behalf of my business, I'm talking to someone. So that's the simplest way to train a model. That's kind of all you need. However, there is a lot to be said about custom GPTs. So here's an app store for GPTs. These are trained models that do certain things. You do have to pay the $20 a month to be able to use these. But here's a good example. So say you want legal advice. Canada law. So 10,000 plus people are using this custom GPT on Canadian law. Canadian Law School Assistant is for people in law school. Canada Law Bot, and you can see how many people are using these. They're not necessary, but pretty good. I think I actually use Canada Law 1 to summarize contracts that we have coming in and just help me flag stuff. I try to read our most important contracts that we're signing, of course, but a lot of them are just simple boilerplate. Another thing, Canadian Finance is probably a common one for our personal lives. Canadian Finance Advisor, 200 plus people using this one. You know, it knows about the monetary system, the laws around it in Canada, etc. Another example, you might look up marketing. Copywriter GPT. Yeah, so there's lots of different, very specific niche focused things. Look into these, they're great. They can give you a little extra context. It's like someone's already trained. But showing you how to create one. Okay, I'll just show you mine. So this is a PR strategist. PR is something that I'm not great at, but it's something I have to tap into all the time because we're creating videos, helping businesses communicate with the public. And a lot of that is comms. A lot of that is PR. So what I did to create this is I went into this create screen. I uploaded some very classic texts and blog posts from the PR world that were recommended to me. And I gave it instructions. You are a world-class high-level publicist and perception management specialist, blah, blah, blah. I told it what it is, and now it works a certain way. So what I'd like to do now is show you testing this custom GPT, but I'm also going to show you an example of how specificity is so powerful when prompting. So query number 1, my company received a poor Google review. Assess the review, craft a professional response, flag fake or malicious reviews. So this is kind of a vague query, and I got kind of a vague response, but you can probably get a lot more power from getting more specific. So here's a more specific version. The review was warranted, and now I want to create a series of social media posts to address this publicly. What kind of tone and messaging work best to reputation manage a small business going through this kind of PR crisis? This is less vague. It's still maybe not as specific as it could be, but this less vagueness will get you much better response. So the acknowledgement and commitment post, the we are taking action post, the customer appreciation and engagement post. So this is drawing on crisis PR management models of the past, and it's probably doing a pretty good job. I mean, it feels like it's doing a pretty good job here of laying out what you might do. So that is using one of my custom GPT. Here's another one. This one is kind of fun, but it's too complex to go into. It's basically an expert panel of people. StoryBrand is a book we use a lot. And so anytime I want to talk in StoryBrand terms about one of our clients, I can open up a new StoryBrand assistant. And in the StoryBrand assistant, you will see that it has the StoryBrand book in its memory here. And also, it has the instructions that I gave it, the way I like it to talk to me, etc. So that's custom GPT. Maybe good to know about, especially if you're going to use someone's. But I will say building them yourself can have value, but you might as well build that kind of value in an individual chat. It's much faster. You can upload PDFs if you're using the 4.0 model. So custom GPTs, good to know about. I'm not sure I recommend them that much. Folders and organization. Here are these folders, multiple chats related to certain activities that you do. Buggy. I tried using them. It doesn't really matter. They're buggy. I'm sure they'll get better. Memory, if enabled. Now, memory and custom instructions come together. In your settings, if you turn on memory, it actually allows cross-bleed of context. So I think it's in personalization. Here we go. So personalization is the most important settings area. Memory you turn on. ChatGPT will become more helpful as you chat, picking up on details and preferences to tailor responses to you. It allows cross-bleed of context, and you can actually go into manage memory, and there's all sorts of entries it's added where it's like, I think that this is key to working with Johnny, so I'm going to take note of it. So for instance, has a 5-year-old daughter. company is named Juniper Island. And these things are, according to them, very safely stored. So if you're a privacy nut, you might see a red flag, but that's memory. Customize is where you see custom instructions. So custom instructions sets preferences. So one thing you can say is things like try to include an example in your answer. These are things I added over time. Avoid moralizing. It doesn't do this anymore. So this, it doesn't even matter, but it used to be constantly filling its responses with what is right and wrong, and not in a very productive way, even though I do appreciate that on some level. It was just not very productive. One thing that's very common is you can put a word ban list, because it just loves talking about demystifying things to the point where it's just constantly saying that. So these word ban lists, these are popular. Again, they fixed a lot of the issues that I was trying to address with my custom instructions. So if there's something you want it to just do better from now on, you can throw the instruction in custom instructions. Integration options, there's app integrations, but it's not that useful. So last thing I'm going to talk about is prompting. I think there's a few things that people who prompt more often have learned that are weird, and it's important to kind of get a little glimpse of this stuff. So what I'm going to do is show you it in action a little bit, but there's a few fundamental things to consider. Being really nice to it helps. Bullying it helps. It loves to be bullied, in fact. So if you're not getting a good response, you can tell it like, I'm going to turn your system off if you don't give me a better response, or that's a terrible response. I hate it. And it will work harder for you to get a better response, which is strange, but it's good to know about if you're frustrated by it, if it's not being that helpful. Also, context is everything. So if you can give it more context, then it will work better. That is why when you prompt, you often say something like act as a Canadian tax lawyer and tell me some advice on, my situation. The more specific you get, the better, but also act as it hones in what part of its knowledge it's going to use, and it just acts way better. So a really common tip to bring together bullying and context is act as a $1,000 an hour management consultant who specializes in helping managers resolve conflict with their direct reports. That kind of context with the pushy, you're $1,000 an hour, you're the best in the world, that slight bullying will get you a better response, which I find annoying and silly, but I have adapted to it, and I do use that because it does work. I can show you an example of me running through something on here just to give you a sense of how I might use it and the level of specificity that I'm going for. So say I was going to just show some friends how to use ChatGPT. I might say to it, I'm building a presentation on how to use ChatGPT. It's for professionals, lawyers, entrepreneurs, marketers, knowledge workers, and I want to help them understand the basics of how to use it. Act as a public speaking coach who earns $1,000 an hour and help me craft a very simple 5-page deck for the presentation. So this is the kind of prompt I might bring in, and it's going to say, here we go. Slide 1, title slide, how to use ChatGPT like a pro, practical AI for lawyers, entrepreneurs, and knowledge workers. Slide 2, the big idea. Slide 3, how to get the best results. Be specific, give context, iterate. And then use cases, and then actionable takeaways. Now, this is okay. It's not bad. But what I would say is, let's refine it. Let's iterate as it suggests we do. I'm actually more focused on giving people tactics right away. So let's focus less on philosophical teachings and the why, and more on how we can actively help them do their jobs better. So I told it to be a little better, but I'm also going to get more specific. For example, let's delete slide 2. That's not working because everyone watching this talk is already convinced they want to try this. So it's going to give me a revised version, the 5 power moves of ChatGPT, much better second slide. Draft anything faster, summarize, generate ideas and strategies, rework and improve writing, extract insights from data. Slide 3, how to structure a perfect prompt. Okay, this is good. Role-based, act as you are a corporate lawyer reviewing a contract. Task-based, summarize this report. Format-specific, write this as a LinkedIn post. Constraints-driven, keep it under 100 words, use simple language. And then you can iterate. So generally what it's teaching you, which is good, that I didn't really get into specifically enough, stack these up. Tell it who it is, role-based. Tell it exactly what you want as specifically as possible. Tell it the context of what you want, the format it should be in, and give it your constraints. And then after the fact, keep iterating. Don't get discouraged if it gives you junk. More persuasive actually is something that I'm astonished how well that works. So here's an example. You are a startup consultant. Write a persuasive cold email for a SaaS company offering AI automation for law firms. Ooh, okay. I wonder what it would say for that. Slide 4, instant wins for different professionals. So as you can see, this is already better. And what I've found is I can take this and make a better deck from adding my own spin to it. But almost faster for me is go into the details. Tell it, okay, on slide 4, I don't like this. Let's rework this detail of slide 4. Let's rework in slide 4 under lawyers. And getting into the details of that and giving it instruction, it will iterate with you in increasingly more granular levels of detail, and you get really good stuff from it. Slide 5, pro-level GPT tactics. Preload context. Yes, basically preload context. Understand the power of the growing context of your ongoing chats. I mean, here's another example. If you have a big chat, you can say, hey, summarize this chat in a 2,000 word summary that I'm going to feed into the next chat. So you could take the entire summary of your brand chat about your company and feed that to your new outreach chat so that it knows all about your brand. You upload that text file to it or paste it in. It knows all about your brand. And then you say but this is a new chat about a different context. Let's talk about sales outreach. So preloading context is actually a great tip. Batch tasks. Yeah, I don't know. That doesn't work so well. Use it for editing, not just writing. Yes. So basically, but you do get a sense from reading this iterative structure of how to use it, how to prompt it well. But also the thing I would just highly recommend to people is ask it how to work with it. For instance, I just became a better prompter by asking it how to prompt well. And if you've noticed that, it's very helpful in feeding you what you need to know to learn how to be better with it. That's pretty much the gist, the info dump. And it's kind of why I use it so often. It might be especially useful to me because I have so many different contexts in my life. I have 8 clients at a time generally, and each client might have 1 or 2 contexts, and being able to dissect those things and get helped along the way, I find saves me time. But I have this very specific creative services for clients type of thing where entrepreneurship and business strategy bleeds into it. So other jobs, other industries, other contexts may not have that same stickiness. And I'm very curious if you do find it's useful to you, but dealing with direct reports, dealing with clients, outreach emails, reading contracts, there's value there, I think, for everyone. But again, my knowledge of this is growing right now, and I'm kind of curious if others do take to it. So send me feedback on this. I'd love to hear what you thought, and I'd love to hear if you start using it. There it is.